Nobody's born incredible. People who do incredible things simply took the right steps. This is our journey. This is the hunt for incredible. This is the first of 2 episodes where I interview Dave Ceresne. Dave is one of the top 50 revenue-generating hosts on Airbnb with over 15 properties, 10 of which are listed as guest favorites on Airbnb. He's tried everything from Airstreams to glamping to standard structures, all of which made this episode a ton of fun. I hope you enjoy it. All right, so on today's episode, we have a special guest, Dave Ceresne. He owns multiple Airbnbs, has over 1,000 reviews on Airbnb. I actually came across his profile because I was looking around, looking for somebody who has multiple properties that have incredible presentation, that are clearly well-performing. And I came across his portfolio on Airbnb and thought, man, I have to pull this guy aside and have a conversation with him. So, Dave, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here. Happy to share a few nuggets of wisdom.
Yeah, of course. Would you mind, I guess, starting from the beginning in terms of how you identified this as an opportunity and the steps that you took to get in there?
Sure, yeah. So I started this Airbnb journey, I guess, in 2016. And prior to this, I was a commodity trader in the precious metal industry. So I made a little bit of money doing that, and I just decided I wanted to, what I thought would be passive income, get into a business that would be, passive income. Not to say that Airbnb can't, just the way I structured it, it went through periods being active and passive. But so in 2016, I bought my first, it was like a 5-bedroom, 5-washroom ski chalet in a town called Blue Mountain, Ontario. And originally I bought it for myself because I just, wanted to have my own ski chalet or cottage. And that's what I started with Airbnb. I think I only maybe slept in it one time or something. And I put it up and I could get like $1,000 a night for it. So I was thinking, okay, well, if I'm getting $1,000 a night, why would I sleep in it when I can rent a hotel or something for like a couple $100 and make an $800 profit? So I ended up, that first property ended up paying, and that was, before Airbnb really started blowing up. But I think I paid like $320,000 for that. And in 2 years, I actually paid back. I grossed about 320 in the 2 years. Net was obviously less, but I paid that property back in full in a few years. And then, I started buying more properties, and, I was able to get to my income to a point where, I was able to scale and hire a property manager and a handyman, and I did all the management in-house, but I built a team that did that. And I was able to do that. I think I had like 7 or 8 properties at that time. And I was able to do that where now I didn't really have to do that much work, maybe a half an hour a day, if that. And I could now have, an income where I was making more money than I was spending. So I did that. And I traveled for like maybe a couple of years. I took a couple of years off, maybe 2.5 years off, and just, I got to 7 or 8 units, didn't really, try to expand after that. I kind of got content, came back to Canada.
So that 7 to 8 units, was that the threshold at which you were able to quit your day job?
My day job was quit a long time ago. I was in the precious metal industry, but I had some money, right? So I had made some money in that industry, and I was like, okay, well, what do I do now, right? I want to invest the money. I don't want to put it into stocks, and I also want a passive income, right?
Nice.
So that's kind of that's kind of how that started.
Okay.
So then I got to 7, 8 units, and I was able to, it's interesting because when I had 1 or 2 or 3 units, I was doing a lot more work than when I had like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 units. And the reason was because you're able to scale at that point. You can pay somebody to manage all your properties. You can have an operations manager, right? You can have a full-time handy person, right? So, you have your cleaning team, and now you can take a step back because you have somebody else running your business, right? So I got to that point, and I got up to 14 properties in Canada, and they're very, very high performing properties. And I actually think I was in Canada, it was like in the top 50 revenue generating hosts in Canada, is what my Airbnb manager told me. And so I got to that point, and then again, I started, taking it easy, and I was kind of thinking like, where is this going? I kind of started getting hungry again. I was like, okay, what's this industry looking like? Where is the future in this, and where is this going? And what do I want to do in this industry essentially? That led me into my next project, which I'm doing right now, and I'm currently still in the infancy stage of it, and that's called Astria. And what Astria is essentially the tiny home glamping resort in a town called Fredericksburg, which is located in Texas. So this has been a really, really crazy challenge for me. And 2023 was, basically, um, probably one of the hardest years of my life. And it was because there were so many learning curves and challenges along the way. And I'll just tell you what happened. So during COVID lockdowns, I moved from Toronto to Austin, and a girl invited me up to this cottage in Fredericksburg. And being in the Airbnb business, she basically, everybody pitched in, and she wanted some crazy amount of money, right? I'm like, this is how much this cottage is costing. She's like, yeah, it's like the best one we can find for this price. So then I started, doing some research on that market, and then I was like, oh, okay, this is like, this market makes sense.
What were some of the things that you looked at that you saw the market made sense? Was it mostly like the cost per night, or the ADR was high and you saw that the demand was high as well? Or were there some other metrics that you were looking at?
I mean, the first thing that caught my attention was actually being, partaking in renting a place in that market, right? And then realizing, just being an Airbnb, and it being a cottage in the rural market that I'm into, I was like, what? The numbers were just really high. So it got me curious. I went on AirDNA. I talked to like a bunch of people, did a ton of research on the area. I spent probably another 3-4 months kind of just researching the area. And then I called a realtor and I started looking around for property, and I put a bid on, I tried to buy several properties, and it was in 2021, which was, a crazy market back then. And it was, just blind bidding. I didn't get any of the properties that I wanted. And then my realtor called me back and he said, Dave, I don't have a property, but you told me you wanted to buy something, property with some land that you could further develop. I do have this piece of land. It's a great, it's a great piece of land. You have all the zoning that you want to do. You can do whatever you want on it. It's raw, but if you're interested, I can show you it. So sure enough, I bought that piece of land. It was a 20-acre parcel, and it was just covered with trees. Like you couldn't even walk around there. There's so many trees on there. So I said, you know what? Let's do it. So I bought the land. I paid $420,000 for it. And so then over the course of the next couple of years, I spent essentially planning and developing this land. Now, I didn't have any experience developing raw land. I didn't even have a U.S. working visa. I didn't know anything about, Texas, and, the market's a lot different than it is in Canada. And especially when you're trying to do these things in COVID, it's just anybody involved in building was extremely busy at the time. And unfortunately, construction is one of those industries. If you don't know your way around it, you're probably going to have some hard lessons in it, which I did have. So long story short, I went through a whole design phase, these 50 units, and I had to throw it all in the garbage. And it took me about 8 months doing that. I ended up scrapping the whole plan and starting fresh.
And was that because construction was so busy that given your current plans, it just wasn't going to deliver? And so you needed something that had a shorter lead time? Or
So I just went too crazy with the designs to a point where it just kind of wasn't really that practical to build. And I didn't realize that at the time. I didn't have the experience. I kind of just, had this crazy idea that I wanted to do these super cool designs. So that was the reason why I had to scrap it. Nevertheless, I learned from that. I ended up I started with a couple Airstream units. I got my well, my septic, some water going, and then I purchased a couple Airstream units, which, by the way, I'm going to tell anybody right now, just don't even think about doing that. You're going to regret it.
yeah, what?
I
Okay.
still have them.
I would love to take a second for that, because this is something that's come up a handful of times in conversations that I've had with people, and I have no experience in it. Like, it's often there's the assumption that it's just you buy this package and you just throw it out there and it's going to sell, because there are some listings on Airbnb that do pretty well with those on them. What
Sure,
were so
sure.
I have a couple questions. One is what was it like to get water and electric out to this rural area? And then secondly, tell me about the challenges with the airstreams.
Sure. So to get water and septics, it's it's the same thing. If you don't know what you're doing, and I didn't know what I'm doing, people are going to, even if you do know what you're doing, people are going to try to take advantage, especially when there's a lot more demand, like when there's a lot of people wanting to install and lead times for getting a well are a year out, right? So for instance, my public water system, my quotes were coming in from anywhere from 160 to $197,000.
Wow.
Long story short, I ended up getting it done for about maybe 50 by essentially, ordering all the components myself and finding trades to do it. It was a big learning process, but I ended up getting it done for a fraction of the cost. And that's why I see now when people are doing these types of developments, there's a lot of room for saving money and, there's a lot of room for waste. So I guess it just depends, who you're working with. So, choosing a good construction team who not only will do the job properly, because that's another thing that I learned also. There's so many learning curves in the past year. You have no idea. Is crucial, right? That's your number one thing, right? Also, people probably say this a lot when you're developing and building. The cheapest price is not always the best, and
Right.
that's. But then again, the most expensive price isn't always the best either,
Right.
right? So, and this is something I'm still learning right now. I'm literally every day I'm learning this stuff. So, I started with the Airstreams, but the reason why I recommend not doing it, sure, people are doing good with them, sure, they're making some money, but if you take that compared to like, if you have the option of doing a different build, like an on-site build, you build that house, you won't have any issues with it if you do it right. You won't have complaints. You won't have the septics or the, holding tanks are backing up. You won't have the water's cold. You won't have the propane. The amount of time I spend on these Airstreams is insane to the point where I'm literally putting them up for sale right now.
Oh
And
wow.
I'm contemplating, even though I could make some money off of them, I'm contemplating not even renting them until I sell them because that's how much of a headache that they
Oh
are.
wow.
Yeah. So that's my take on that. And then the next evolution was I bought domes, right? So I have 3 geodomes that I ordered and, also stick built construction over modular building, I would say, in my experience. So I ordered the domes. I haven't had nearly as many problems as I had with the Airstreams with the domes, but there still have been some problems. Also, the domes are going to last you what 3, 4, 5 years maybe before you have to,
Right.
do something. The air condition, very hard on air conditioning, very hard on heating. I haven't had any issues with that because I've only had my domes running for like 6 months. They do rent well. I will give them that. But if you take a longer term, more macro perspective, if you could, site build, then I would site build. And the reason why I didn't site build in the beginning was because I just got burnt so bad on the architecture side that I just got impatient and I was like, okay, how can I get up and running here? I figured out my water. I figured out my septics. I had lots ready to go. And I was like, you know what? I'll give the domes a try.
So
So
what do the numbers on those domes look like? Because it sounds like I mean they're purely cash flow plays, right? You're not going to get any appreciation out of those. So they're purely
no
cash
appreciation.
flow. They only last a few years. What does the return profile on that look like, knowing that you're going to have to either replace it or build something else in its place in a few years?
Yeah. So in hindsight, I wouldn't have done it. Long story short, I mean, I'll probably do off each dome. And then I haven't had these open for that long, right? I think October is when I actually launched the domes. So I'm not sure exactly, but I'll probably do somewhere around maybe 80 or 90 off a dome. But then again, I had to build it. I had to do the decking. There's been a lot of maintenance involved, a lot of headaches with it. And ultimately I will have to pull it down and build, one thing I did do was I built these super nice platforms and I did reinforce them so they could support housing on it, knowing that at some point in the future, I will pull the dome down. But, and now I have the tiny homes. After the domes, I started finally doing, site builds. So I did a bunch of these or I have four that I have two that I just finished that have been up for about a month and a half. Two more that are almost going to be finished in the next maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and then a bunch more that I'm starting in the next couple of weeks.
Nice.
So, and
What's
that,
the
yeah,
is that so the domes you said it's 80 to 90K, is that per year?
per year, yes.
Okay, and they cost roughly how much would you say to set them up?
Okay, so that's a little bit hard because there's the dome costs, right? So call it like, 85.90. So 85.90 to set up the domes. And then you have to, don't forget, you have to install power, right? You have to install water. You have to allocate septic for it, right? So depending on how many you do, right? Like I essentially designed my property for 40 units, right? So the septic that I put in, I was able to utilize for some houses too,
Oh,
right?
nice.
Along, same with the power racks and same with the water system that I put in, right? Like
Mhm.
I have this water system that I can do all 40 units with. But I mean, if you had to say you're building it from scratch with infrastructure, I mean, every location is going to be different. I don't know, maybe 140,
Oh, wow.
150 if you have to put a well in for just that purpose,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So, and then those things, you have to have a very good cleaning crew with those because there's a lot of wear and tear on them. So I
Mm.
actually had to go through about, 9 cleaners before I
Wow.
found ones that were going to do a good job with my domes and keep them to the level that I wanted them at.
Gotcha. Yeah, cleaners are always tough. Cleaners are always tough. And it's tricky too because once you find a good cleaner, if they're good enough, then their book of business grows and then they have to bring other cleaners in and so then the quality drops back down. That's a that's a
100% of
that's
the
a
100% of the
constant
time.
battle. Yeah. All right, so then
Yeah.
you mentioned that you would prefer actual builds with the sticks over modular homes. Why is that?
Okay. So I looked at modular homes. So first of all, with modular homes, I feel like the originality is more limited. And ultimately, if it's a good design, they're probably selling a bunch of them. But I just feel like the modular homes that I saw are pretty standard, pretty cookie cutter. And also, if you price your properties properly and you get a good builder, you should be able to build on site for cheaper than what you can get a modular home for. That was my experience, and a better
Interesting.
quality product. Not to say that, I mean, I didn't do an extensive amount of research into modular. I did look at it. I looked at things on wheels, but then again, it's not just about cash flow, right? It's about, what's your exit strategy down the road,
Right.
and you want capital appreciation too, right? So, do you want a product that, is going to last you 50 years, or a product that might last you a little bit less, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
well, a lot less.
Yeah. Awesome. So how many structures did you say you built? Not including like the deck domes.
So I have two that have been up and running on Airbnb for the past month, and I have two more that are going to be done the next few weeks.
Awesome.
And ultimately, I'm going to be building 40, and I'm going to start another 6 units in the next week and a half, 2 weeks. And then right now I'm designing my first Hobbit home. So I'm going
Oh,
to,
nice. Wait.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
what does
So,
that look like?
yeah.
Is that like in like
Well,
inside of
I
a
mean,
dome
so
or
far,
something?
yeah, so exactly one of the Lord of the Rings Hobbit homes. I'm just trying to get like my next builds better and better and better, right? Something more unique, more original. And, there's a lot of people going into Airbnb right now. So if you are going to go into your own construction, or even if you're going to buy something and renovate it, right? Like you want to try to do something a little bit different, not just, order the typical, stuff off, you know, the bullhorn paintings off Wayfarer, whatever, right? I mean, they're fine. Listen, if you have a decent design, you'll still make money. That's the reality. But, you know, kind of want to be a little bit original. I think it helps.
100%. And how long does it take to set those builds up? Because if I recall, those sleep like 2 to 4, right? So they're smaller structures. Were you able to get those up pretty quickly?
So the short answer is no. Quicker now, but in the beginning, and I was also changing a lot of things like my idea was do one demo, make it nice, make it perfect, or make it good, and then, rinse and repeat, right? So the first one I think took me like 5 months, and it was pretty small too. It took me a while, but then again, the summer in Texas was pretty hot. It was like 120 every day. So construction like grinded to a halt during the summer. But
Mm.
the second one I think took me maybe 3 months to get up. Third one maybe similar, maybe 2.5 to 3, and so now we're picking up the pace, and that's one of the other reasons why I wanted to do, and I think you do it too with the hotels. You want to scale, right?
Right.
You want to basically you want to scale everything you can possibly scale, right? And when you essentially, if you get the scaling done properly, you should be able to make more money, have a better product, have more time, right?
Yeah, so is that the big play with Astria is just building this like 40 unit dwelling, or I guess encampment near Fredericksburg, and then like it's mostly the economies of scale that you're going for, or is it that you're also shifting the target demographic to maybe weddings and stuff? My wife and I actually got married out in Fredericksburg, and I
Oh,
proposed
did
to
you
her
really?
in Canada.
Oh,
So you and I,
oh nice.
yeah, we have deeper roots
Yeah,
than we realize. Now that I'm talking to you, I'm like, oh wow,
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
proposed.
Yeah, big market for that, Texas or Fredericksburg. But
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So what's your strategy there, your play there in terms of actually scaling up multiple units on a single parcel?
I mean, the idea is exactly that too. It's like, okay, how can you basically do this? How can you do this in the best way possible, right? And I'm not scaling, all in one shot, right? But so it first starts, okay, you get some units going, you get, three, 5 units going. Now you have, income coming in. Now you can now hire, somebody to be, on the site full time, basically a full time, maintenance guy to start, keep an eye on your project, right? Then you scale more, and then you can maybe hire a full time marketer, an operations person, or even now you can hire an operations person. Then you scale more, and you can kind of have just, at that point, you can have the income coming in to really hire, really good people to essentially run your whole place, and maybe even have your own, general contractor in house or something like that, right? So kind of that's what I'm going for. But getting to that point is a lot of work.
Hmm.
It's, especially when you have to go through the learning curves of learning how to construct, which I think that's a lot of people in our industry. I feel that's, at least when I go to these like conferences, there's a lot of people who are killing it with marketing and operations and, super host statuses and, best, Airbnb properties. But I feel like the construction component is a lot where a lot of people are lacking, right? But it's really interesting because if you do take the time and actually nail that, and that is going to be a commitment, there will be pain involved in learning that. But if you do take that time, what I've realized is, I can get more money for these much smaller houses than I can for a much bigger already existing property that I might go buy, right? So I'm now selling more properties in Canada, these, big 4 or 5 bedroom cottages, and putting the money into construction development, right, into these more unique types of properties.
That's awesome. So you've made a couple comments around like design and photography. Is that like the primary lens by which you look at things when you're thinking about these experiences? Is okay, step number one is it has to be a beautiful, well presented experience, and then everything falls in line after that, or do you think of it differently?
I feel like it's more like for me, like kind of an experience, right? Like a vibe. When you come, I remember so I spent quite a bit of time in Europe, in Eastern Europe, right? And I used to go to these like spa, unique spa complexes with these, cool accommodations. And, you can go to these places and just go and chill and relax. And, you completely de-stress from them. And that's kind of like the vibe that I'm going for, right? So it's like what contributes to that vibe of just, just being able to like relax, chill out, and have a different experience than you're going to be having in a city, and definitely a different experience than you're having in a hotel. Like when you come to Astria, and this is, in all the reviews, people are like, the experience is incredible, right? Like literally, the location, it's a mile and a half down a dirt road. You're close to the city, but it's also, you feel like there's been so many, like, there's been so many people that are like, literally, when I driving down the road to get here, like, um, I thought like everybody gets lost, right? They're not lost, but they feel like they're in the middle of nowhere, right? And they get on their hot tub, and then there's no noise pollution, no sound pollution, and it's just pure tranquility, like when the sun goes down. So that's like the vibe that I'm going for, right? And I like personally, I like nice accommodations. I like nice places. I want a nice big king bed. I want it to be comfortable. I want, a nice aesthetic, right? But I also want to be able to chill out. So I think that's kind of like whatever adds to that experience is kind of something to be considered, right?
Yeah. Did you do anything to test out that market before going all in, or did you saw the numbers, fundamentals work, you spoke to people and you said, "All right, I'm willing to give this a full send. We're going to do a massive development."
I mean, so you look at these, I mean, definitely the research involved, and you look at these Airbnb properties, even if they're just like single versions of essentially what I'm doing now, and they're booked out and they're doing amazing and people are loving them, right? So you're like, okay, well, how can I even elevate this experience even better, right? And, that will go with the common areas and, all this other stuff, right? And getting economies of scale. But to answer your question, I really didn't go all out. I feel like, I've been going actually very slow. I feel like I've been going quite conservatively. And, sure, off the hop, I could have built, 10, 20 unit. I could have went to the bank. I could have borrowed money. I could have sold more places. I could have taken out credit line, right? But I feel I went pretty conservatively where, you're going a little more and you're going a little more. And then you realize it gets to a point where there's like no turn back, right? And it's like, okay, now I got to, finish this because I've so invested into it, right? It's like, it's hard to describe, but first you buy the piece of land, right? And then you're like, okay, great. It's an appreciating piece of land. I don't have to do anything with it, right? And then you start spending some money on it, right? And then you're like, okay, now I spent money in it. And then you buy these Airstreams that, give you all kinds of problems, and you're $10,000 into repair bills before you even start renting them, right? And then it just snowballs and snowballs, and so it's like, as much as I want to say I am all into it, and I'm pretty heavily into it, I would say I would say it was probably a few steps more than being conservative. It wasn't all in, but it was definitely a big risk, and it
Gotcha.
still is, right? But finally, when you spend so much time doing something, and it, you see these Airbnbs, you see like, yeah, they're going to make money, right? You're going to be successful, but just going through the day-to-day motions, there is a lot of doubt in your mind, even though you know what the outcome is. But then like the best feeling ever is when one of these things is finished and you get it booked and you get your first review. And the person's like, this is the best. Like, I came here for my anniversary, or I proposed, or, and you're like, wow, like this feels good. And then automatically you're like, okay, what's next, right?
Yeah.
Or what can I do next, right? So, yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. But I mean, I got to a point in this industry where it was like I hit my first goal, which was, I wanted the passive income. It's like, I want passive income, right? And then you get to that point, and then you're like, okay, now what do I do, right? And that's the point that I got to, right? For like 2, 3 years, I didn't grow my business at all. I was just, chilling. And I think if you have the potential to do something or the vision to do something, and I think if you don't do it, then that's something that, that you might regret, right?
Yeah. So what is your goal then? So your first goal is passive income. You knocked that out of the park.
That was my
You
first
said,
one.
"Okay, I'm going to
Yeah.
go bigger now." What is it now that you're getting to? How are you defining that success?
Oh, yeah. So I have like, I mean, I have my crazy vision ahead of me, and that's not on this project. That's on a different one. But ultimately, like, I want to have the most unique experiential resort, essentially in the United States. So ultimately, I do have a longer term vision, which, I'm hoping to really take everything that I'm learning from my project here and being able to, roll it into something really, really kind of like a crazy type of experience. So yeah, just basically right now, I'm still really like in the grind, like grinding in the grind of things, and I'm still like learning a lot. And now I'm starting to play with, other types of units, and I'm going to start getting a lot more creative with my types of infrastructure. And I really hope to be able to build like a really good construction team and a design team. So that's kind of what I'm focused on now, is just kind of getting more really good experiential units on site, taking all that money and investing it back into the team that I have and being able to really put together the right group of people that can really, come up with some, crazy stuff.
Dude, that is so sick. That is so sick. Because it's like it's building the momentum in life with what you have to just go bigger and bigger and bigger. And having that mindset, like you're saying, of looking through the properties in Fredericksburg and saying, all right, how can I level up on top of all these? You weren't looking at it and saying, oh, it would cost me this much for this property and this is the return. Do I want to recreate what's already there? And am I okay with those returns? Instead, you said, okay, this is the baseline. How do I take it to that next level so I can provide that insane experience and start like a compound? Is it 40 units? Did I hear you right earlier on?
It's 40 units. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like taking it to that next level is amazing.
Yeah. So and I think there's so much more that could still be done in this space. And with what you said before regarding, just buying something and making it nice, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think that's still great. And there's still a huge difference between obviously property owners or, Airbnb hosts that, put like, do something really original and how they take care of it. I think that definitely does affect the experience and basically your average, kind of Airbnb host, right? And you could still make money doing that. Obviously, you can make a lot of money doing that if you do it, correctly with the right properties. But I mean, I think right now I'm just kind of more motivated by like, okay, could I do what I'm trying to do, right? Like, could I actually pull this off, right? Could I do this? And it's like every day you just try to get a little bit closer and a little bit closer and a little bit closer to this kind of idea that you have, right? And for me, that's kind of where I find like my fulfillment. Um, what makes me feel good about myself, right? It's like, okay, well, I'm trying this, I'm doing it.
Yeah. That's awesome.